All right, welcome back to the program. We're talking now with Mr. Hanif Benjamin, a clinical traumatologist who was a chairman of the Children's Authority in Trinidad and Tobago. We're talking with a phenomenon in front of us these days, violence in schools in the country. The note is that there is rampant violence among school children in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a subject we've discussed before, but it comes back at us. Good morning, sir.
A blessed good morning to you and to all your viewers and listeners throughout the world.
Yeah.
Let me start by saying this. In 1996, around there, a fellow student, classmate of mine, died from a fight where his head was busted open. Years before that, my first foray of violence was students fighting girls. Patches of hair were pulled out of their head and their breast and other parts were exposed in the fights every single day when I attended Marabella Junior Secondary back in the days. This is not a phenomenon, and I want to make that absolutely clear. What this is an inability to deal with a perennial issue before our schools. This is not a phenomenon. This has been with us since King Hatchet was a hammer. I have explained to you in my youth days, I have seen violent fights, including death. And so what we are dealing with is an inability to get a situation under control for myriad of reasons, but I wanted to make sure that we get that point very clear.
So it's not new.
It is not. It is not. Violence in school has been a thing forever. But more importantly, I would have said repeatedly during the pandemic that school, in most instances, were the place where children spoke about abuse. School were, in essence, a safe place for many of our children, but for a few hours. When the pandemic came, and school had to close, no fault of anyone, our children had no place to go. They lived in the lion's den. They lived in the jungle, and there was no rescue. And so I want that to also be clear, that for 2 years, our children were locked away to be protected, and therefore, any psychologist or behaviorist will tell you it takes 2 years for behavior change to occur. That was the period of the pandemic. And therefore, we shifted the classroom violence to online violence or what they call the keyboard warriors. And nobody treated with those issues. And as a result of that, nobody heeded my call when I said if we are opening schools, the approach must be different. You cannot open school to concentrate on any exams. Children were locked away for 2 years, and in their release, as it were, we needed to take a psychosocial approach to education. We needed to take a mental health approach to education, and we needed to decompress a very compressed situation where children were locked away. And whether or not it was abuse or just cabin fever, they have a lot to explode on.
And so we were in a position, we had what it took to do these things?
Of course. We have social workers, we have guidance counselors, albeit inadequate for our school system. Because as you and I both know, one social worker to 4 schools, that could mean 2,000 to 3,000 students. We have one guidance counselor to 2 and 3 schools. That could mean 1,000. So there's an inadequate amount of guidance counselors and social workers to do the awesome job that they do.
Right.
But we have people in the system, and what I suggested is that even if you needed to employ companies, private firms to come into the school for this last 2 months, April, May, June, that last semester there, to begin to do a targeted approach to students, we wouldn't be in this situation. But our response is always negative and punitive. So we have principals calling to have police patrol. I am confused as to what exactly this patrol is going to do, right? We want to lock up children and charge them without first understanding what really occurred. We want to vilify our children, and we are always swift to make an example of children. Yet when we have criminals roaming the street, we are not as swift as we should be. And therefore, it is constant that what we are doing is constantly failing our children over and over and over. And yet again, we see a situation of failure to one, address the violence that is perennial, that has been in schools forever. And secondly, a failure to address the return to school. We have not addressed in any significant way the issues that our children are facing in any real way. But our approach is female milats, boot camp, lock them away, expel them. That has been our response. That is why we will consistently be in this position year after year. This school violence is not new, and nor is it a new thing to the world. As a matter of fact, if you look throughout the world right now, in certain societies, school violence is very much on a rise or is very much present. And the reason for that is that students have a lot to say and we are not listening.
So in this case, I think you spoke about that in the last couple of days, the decision of the authorities to suspend the girl in Williamsville. You said that the approach to treating that was all off mark, all wrong, right?
That is not suspension, that is expulsion.
Right. She was expelled.
And I want people to understand, you expel the child to what? To whom? What exactly are we saying to this child in this expulsion? What exactly are we saying in terms of rehabilitation and to re-engineer a 15-year-old girl into society? Where and what is this girl going to become? You have to understand, for a long time, we should have set up suspension centers. I think there are one or two, but it is not operating the way it should be in terms of best practice model. And this child should have been sent to a suspension center where this child should have received serious psychosocial mental health counseling, first and foremost, to find out why she did what she did, what was the mitigating factors surrounding it, as well as the other students involved, right? So again, the approach is one of sanction and punitive, and we are helping no one. And let me be very clear. I am not negating or even reducing the fact that she did what she did. And I am not reducing the fact that there are repercussions to every action. We have a children court who have a robust youth arm of it that deals with sanctions and stuff. And maybe that should be the place where she should go, where she appear before her peers and deal with the circumstances there so that she could be in a more restorative type of environment. We continue to do the same thing over and over, and we are surprised when the results have not changed. I think they call it insanity. And as a society, we continue to be insane in our approach.
Yeah, but for one thing, she's been accepted by another school. What the reporting I saw said, but also that in the reporting it came out that she said that she'd been complaining about being harassed by others, and
thank you very much. I didn't want to bring that up. Because unless she told me that, I don't want to say that. But the point I'm making here, and I'm glad that you brought it up, is a proper understanding of what... Listen, nobody wakes up in the morning and decides to walk with a knife to do harm. There is a beginning. And while the end was unfortunate, if we are to figure out how to prevent further and future events like this, we must understand from a therapeutic jurisprudence perspective where the law and social work must combine to bring a rehabilitative effort to our children. If we continue to go down this purely punitive road, we will solve nothing, and the authorities seem to not understand that fact. The authorities seem to not understand that this is an issue that has been going on year after year. And I make no mistake in people being surprised, because we have seen violent fights over the century, over the many years, sorry. And so if we keep taking this purely punitive approach as opposed to a therapeutic jurisprudence approach where we merge both law and social work, the children court was designed for that very purpose. Peer resolution was designed for that very purpose. And there is a lot of help within the system that you could give to this student and many other students who are going through. A victim becomes a perpetrator. But in this society, the perpetrator is the one hauled away. When that perpetrator was a victim, nobody helps. When the perpetrator is calling out and crying out, nobody helps. But when the victim turns a perpetrator now, all arms are up. Oh, and we're not tolerating this, we're not doing this. As opposed to, what are we not doing to protect our children? What have we not done to prepare our children for the re-entry into this face-to-face scenario? And we continue to fail our children at every turn.
To what extent these things what you're saying here, get discussed in the fora where they should? And what is your sense as to how people receive alternatives to what, let's take this case, to what has been prescribed as to how to treat this matter? When you all as professionals in this field sit and talk across the table.
The problem here, Andy, is that there's a serious segregation and a serious unwillingness. I am shocked that I have not heard from the bodies representing the Parent Teachers Association, and if they have spoken, I apologize, but I have not heard or seen any real defense of this child, or not just a defense of the child, my apologies. I have not heard anyone speaking about the situation in a restorative manner that is going to bring about a sustained change, right? What I hear is lock up and throw away the key. What I'm not hearing is people understanding the rights of a child to education. What I am not hearing is a rehabilitative approach from any professional sector in relation to what happens to this child. And that is the unfortunate truth of where we are as a society. We have people in authority who do not listen. They do not listen, and they do the same thing over and over and over again. And I and others like me come and we talk over and over again. But the fact is, if the people in authority do not understand child and adolescent development, do not understand trauma in children and adolescents, who do not understand how the brain works in terms of fight, flight, or freeze, who do not understand how the survival mechanism works in children, but yet they are the one pronouncing, then the pronouncement will always be a punitive one, because that pronouncement, Andy, is the easiest of them all. It is easier to push to the side and keep it moving. But let me tell you this, if you look through history, there is no pushing to the side. There is no hiding of the fact. Every single moment, we have a very violent event, but there are multiple sub-violent events. Violent, but not to the point of television.
Yeah, I think Tutor made a statement in the wake of the decision that had been taken, that they're questioning whether the approach that has been taken to suspend her, and then she got charged and
so allow me to apologize then. As I told you, I did not hear, but if I did hear, I will apologize, and so I am sorry, and I'm happy that Tutor would have come forward and made such a pronouncement. Unfortunately, I didn't hear the National Parent Teachers Association.
Right, that's the organization you spoke about, yeah.
Of course, who advocates for the children, Andy? Who advocates? There is no union to represent the children. So unfortunately, they are left without a voice. But I am glad that a school did accept. And I, Hanif A. Benjamin, at the Center for Human Development, will work with that child should she come forward to us. We will work with that child to help her through whatever she's dealing with, including understanding her actions, understanding the veracity, and understanding that there are ways in which we should deal with things, we will work with her. So whoever that school is, they can contact us at the Center for Human Development, and we will provide the work with that child and even the class, a simulator into the class. Because of course, there are going to be challenges around assimilation, having been expelled from one situation to the next. And so we will continue to work with all who would like us to work with them.
Yeah, just to restate your point here about some of the proposals that are emerging about, as you say, a girl's my lap. So that approach is inappropriate in your view, that to be that kind of thinking.
Listen, my lap and all these youth programs have a beautiful need. There's a beautiful need for the program. And I don't want people to get me wrong. I support the youth programs. However, in Trinidad and Tobago, we use the youth program as a punishment as opposed to development. Once you put a punishment, twang or twist on the program, then you have tainted what the program was intended to do. The program was not intended to be in lieu of some type of punishment. The program was meant to develop young men and women in a particular direction. But we have turned these programs into sanctions. And there should never be, that program should never be a sanction. Because once it becomes a sanction, Andy, the children would not receive it as what, just like how the police use clubs. And I remember when we were going through the Children Act and stuff, I said we should not put sending a child to a youth club as a sanction, because it should be sent as development. And once you create the woman Milat and the woman this and the men this, and we create it in a way that it is in lieu of some kind of bad behaved child, then we have tainted the beauty of what the program is and what the program can deliver. And I know people who work in these programs who are very well equipped to help develop children. But their cry is always, when a child comes as a punishment, to move that child from that phase of mental thinking of a punishment is a difficult task. And it erodes the beauty of what those programs can do. So we need to change the thinking from this punitive punishment to youth development, positive youth development.
Yeah, and there are predictions that things are going to get worse with bad behavior and misbehavior in schools.
Once we have not treated with the issues before us, which was exacerbated because of COVID-19 and the fact that our children were locked away for 2 years, for the fact that online bullying was very much present, and now the online bullying has gone into a real life situation, we will continue to see this. If our approach to fixing the issue is police patrol, police in the school, police coming to lock up the child in school, against the judge's rule, right? And so once we continue to do these things, we will remain right where we are. And you and I will be having this conversation in the next few months as this continues. Because the people who are in authority, they are not understanding youth and adolescent development and or positive youth development. Everything is being done from a deficit, punitive approach. Once we continue along those lines, I guarantee you, we will continue to see these violent situations.
What do you think should happen with the students who, or how you think the school should go about, that particular school in Williamsville, going back, walking back the distance to where this thing may have started and who may have been involved and was responsible, those students who... Yeah.
Hazel Thompson and he have been touting restorative justice, restorative circles in Trinidad for quite some time.
Yes.
We have not adopted the beauty of what those restorative circles and justice can do. We misappropriate what it means, and we do not see the value in it because we think it is too much work. But what needs to happen now is, again, a person like myself or somebody like this can come in and sit with these students and listen to what they have to say. What the social workers and guidance counselors should be doing is really trying to help the students understand what has happened, understand what may have caused it, and look for solutions within the school. I would recommend some serious youth programs to be part of the school to give the young people something in a positive light to do. What we should be doing is helping the students understand where they are mentally, what are some of the challenges they face, and what are some of the resolution in a non-punitive, non-judgmental way. And I think those are the things that we need to be doing, not just in the Williamville school, but in all our schools right now. I keep making the point, our children went through an odious task for 2 years plus, and nobody seemed to understand how that would have affected them. We as an adult know how it affected us, and we didn't do too well. And so we could imagine for children who have limited coping mechanisms to try to manage all of this. And we are not talking to them, we are not listening to them. And so a targeted program, sustained program in our schools to listen and to help our young people using a positive youth development model approach.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, sir. I think inside of what you said, I just want to say this. There's sometimes when we do some things right, and one of the things we did right was your being appointed chairman of the Children's Authority at that time.
God is good. God is good. Andy, we continue to push forward. Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to push forward. That's all we can do. Yeah. That's why I make myself available to people like you so I can help wherever I can in whatever capacity I can. As I used to say in America, put me by the bus stop on a stool, I will do the work. God bless.
Thank you very much.